Is there anything, say, King Charles was interested in, was kind of looking at the aspects of if disclosure was made or first contacts and his role as head of state, head of the Church of England, what could he do to help his followers, subjects?
Well, I think a couple of things. Firstly, talk behind the scenes clearly to leadership figures in the United States, whether it's the president or whether it's senior government, military, and intelligence community personnel. The king always has a sort of direct access hotline
Sure.
to the top people when he needs it or wants it, which is as you would expect it to be. So here is somebody who could lift up the phone and say, "Look here, what's going on in the United States? I've followed the story with interest about the NASA report, the reports from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the congressional hearings, the multiple UFO-related provisions in the defense bill. I want a full classified briefing," and I'm sure he would get one. But the other thing that he could do, which might be of more practical benefit in the United Kingdom, because we don't need to kickstart this in the US, it's already started. So what we really need to do is get this going in the UK. And one way to do that would be to get Parliament engaged on this and to get the sort of hearing in Parliament that we've seen in the US. And now the way to do that would be to get members of Parliament and peers to raise this by means of parliamentary questions, but also getting the Defence Committee to hold a hearing and essentially holding the Ministry of Defence to account. Now, not many people can do that, but I guarantee the king can. And if it had to be done by the sort of established route of maybe saying to the Secretary of State for Defense, "Look, I want you to do something," or a little bit more subversive, essentially inspiring some backbench MPs to raise this in sufficient numbers. I mean, how this all got started in the US was a small number of congressional representatives here and there started asking some questions. "Hey, I've read in the New York Times that despite denying you had a program, that you had a program, and you've got some US Navy videos. Well, I want to know what's going on." And it built and built. And so the same can happen in the UK, but it starts with a single MP or peer, and then a second, and then a third. And one person who could absolutely start that process is, of course, His Majesty the King.
Brilliant. Okay, let's hope he does. I mean, that's interesting what he said about getting MPs. Why aren't they, leveling questions in Parliament about it? Is there more stigma over here still regarding UFOs that an MP wouldn't want to jeopardize his or her career by talking about such woo-woo stuff? Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Yes, but there's only stigma until there isn't. And somebody has to go first. And yes, it's a big, brave first step. And there's always the fear of ridicule. And you don't want to be the politician associated with flying saucers if that's the way it's spun. But look, politicians can be very astute at times. And it's very easy, I think, particularly if you've got royal support, either overt or covert, but it's very easy to frame your interest in this, if you're a parliamentarian, as an interest stemming from commitment to open government, concerns about defense and national security, or concerns about flight safety. And it's no surprise, or it shouldn't be, that that's exactly how politicians handled it in the US. They said, "Look, I'm coming to this because I'm concerned that there are things in our airspace performing speeds, maneuvers, and accelerations that we can't match. And I want to know, and I'm sure the aerospace community wants to know, and the aviation community, what's going on." That's a perfectly legitimate interest to have. In fact, it would be bizarre if you weren't interested and concerned, for example, about flight safety. in a situation where we've got pilots and radar operators speaking out about this. So there are ways to do it, and there are ways of easing yourself into the subject through this framing it in terms of defense, national security, and flight safety. And by the way, I should pay tribute to Lord Black, who is perhaps one of the few parliamentarians who has asked questions about this on and off over the last 3 or 4 years. But it probably needs someone in the Commons as well as the Lords, and it probably needs 2 or 3 of them to go at once till you begin to build up a little bit of critical mass.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we should be writing to our MPs. I think I'll do that. Write to our MP and, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's got to be done the right way. It's not what you can't just do is say, I want the government to take this seriously, because all that happens is the Ministry of Defense, which stopped investigating, so they say, at the end of 2009, and therefore has no real corporate memory on this, they'll just send a boilerplate reply saying, well, we looked at this for decades, never found anything of any defense significance in terms of a threat. We monitor the air defense region 24/7 through all the standard means like radar, and we're confident in all our processes. Well, that gives them an easy out. So that can't be the question or the concern. The question must be something like, given that the United States, which has conducted a more recent and thorough assessment of this than the United Kingdom, has declared this to be a national security threat, will the UK now hold a defense committee hearing on this subject? So it must be very specifically framed in terms of the Americans have just looked at this and engaged. It's no good the UK falling back on just historical actions, which are well out of date and out of step with the assessment of the dominant power in NATO. If the lead power in NATO says we've done a much more recent assessment than anyone else, more thorough, and we say we should be looking at this, then other countries should be doing so. And there are hints, of course, that through the mechanism of the Five Eyes, the intelligence sharing alliance between the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, there are some indications that this is now happening, but all that's behind the scenes. We need something a little bit more open, and we need Parliament to step up.